100 degrees, the Jew zero. Rockstar Racky, raps guitar hero. Leopard Louboutins like Speedos on Steve-O. Charges to the game, couldn't pause me on TiVo. Beyonce to Kanye, I got a big ego. On to that next shit, you looking at the bestest.
What is going on, Full Heel Podcast? I am back with another installment, another episode, whatever you want to call it. This is episode 66. Robert Whittaker versus Yoel Romero 2, and this is going to be a spoiler show, so if you guys don't want any spoilers for UFC 225 in Chicago, you guys should probably not be tuning in right now, because this is going to be the results show for UFC 225. I attended UFC 225. It was in my hometown of Chicago, my home city of Chicago. This was my first UFC event, my first live event. I've been watching UFC pay-per-view since BJ Penn versus Sean Shirk. Vanderlei was on that same card versus Keith Jardine. Yeah, that was my first pay-per-view. I forget. I think it's like UFC 86 is when I first started watching pay-per-views, and I hadn't been to one. The ones that were here, I think Dillashaw won the title, but it wasn't a pay-per-view. But, you know, it was still an event here. But I was in Champaign at the time. So I was 2.5 hours away. And I probably was broke as shit. Barely any money. Just enough to get by. Sorry. But I wasn't able to make it up to Chicago to check it out. Which I probably should have. Like I said, I worked a lot of night jobs. Or night shifts over there in Champaign, Urbana, working restaurants. So I didn't get a chance to come. There's not a lot of money in that either. So I think I missed that one. Rampage and Rashad might have been here as well. I'm not sure. I think that might have been here as well too. Again, I was in Champaign. I saw it from a Hooters in Champaign. But like I said, this was my first UFC. And it was a good event, a lot of good fights. The card was stacked, probably the most stacked card of the year so far. So, you know, I always complain to Jeff that Chicago never gets any good cards, that we never get any. I think we had Holm versus Jermaine Durandamy. I didn't go to that one either as well. So I'm glad that my first UFC was such a good card. It could have been better. There was a lot of decisions, a lot of close decisions. But all in all, it was a good card. I got to experience it with my oldest nephew. He expressed some interest after UFC. No, it was Bellator 198. Frank Mir versus Fedor Emelianenko. I don't know why I forgot that, but. Yeah, it was Emelianenko versus Mir. We had all gone to that. It was a big group of us. It was like 6 of us that went. And my nephew said that he would be interested in going to one of them. So I'm like, UFC 225 is the next one that I'm probably going to. And he's like, let me know. So it was me, my nephew, and Johnny the Body Ventura. Shout-outs to Johnny. He came along, showed up like super late. Showed up like at... Man... I want to say like at 7:30 to 8 o'clock-ish, around that area. I was more focused on the fights. I had left his ticket in my mailbox so he could pick it up. I know that seems like a jerk thing to do, but not really. So I'm a UFC fan. I want to see MMA fan. I want to watch all the fucking fights. And I told him from the beginning, I'm going to watch all the fights. I'm going to be there from... I think it was 6 o'clock that I thought it started. It actually started a little bit sooner, so I had a rush to get there. So I hit him up early, and I'm like, hey, dude, I'm taking off at this time. And he's like, okay, cool, I'll show up. And he hit me up to wait up for him, but sorry, Johnny. I love you, man, but can't do it, bro. Can't do it. I know his tendencies, and I wasn't going to risk missing as many fights as possible because of someone else. And the United Center being so close to my house, I'm like, no, I can't. I got to take off. So I left his ticket in the mailbox and said, pick up your ticket in the mailbox. Find your own way to the United Center. I was going to get him access. Well, not access. I was going to get him there with his ticket. You know, if he would have came with me, my brother dropped us off a block away. Me and my nephew walked a block to the United Center. Easy peasy. He had a great time, especially him being a novice to MMA experiences. He doesn't know anything about MMA. He knows the bare minimals. He might have seen a fight or two that I've shown him from here and there, some highlights. But anything that he's seen has been from me, and he really hasn't seen anything. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe I need to do a better job as a MMA fan and get him exposed to it. But here's the first step. UFC 225, Yoel Romero versus Robert Whittaker 2. He got to experience fight of the year so far as the main event goes, but we'll get into that when I start breaking down the card. It was awesome. I had a fun time. Like I said, some of the fights, you know, they could have gone a lot more like the main event, and who wouldn't want a stacked card of back and forth, of knockdowns and comebacks and almost winning, and, you know, the main event had it all, and we'll go over that right now. But I was able to explain a lot, and I was able to do what I like doing, and that was talk MMA. Because my nephew, like I said, he's new to this, so I got to sit with him and explain to him, give storylines, give my predictions, pretty much do the podcast to him as it was going on. I got to do a fight companion live with him only, and then later on Johnny showed up, but you know, I just got to explain to him positions, submission attempts, what strikes were exchanged, what they were called, etc., etc. And I jumped into MMA not knowing anything. I took classes on my own, watched UFC because I like it, and I'm hoping he does the same. He's showing that he wants to learn how to kick. That and I've told him kicks are powerful. Some of the most powerful strikes you could throw. They're susceptible to takedowns. And if I were to teach him, he's not only going to learn kicks. He's going to learn what I want to teach. Not what I want to teach him, but he's going to have to learn everything. You know. And in everything, I mean, you're going to have to learn how to wrestle, because what happens when you kick a guy and he can grab your leg and then try to take you down, you're going to have to be able to want to defend that, or else you're just going to get sat down. Like in one of the fights that we wound up watching at UFC 225. What else about that night? I really like UFC, and I guess you got to take the good with the bad. And like, it's just like the movie experience. You have to deal with the public, and you have to deal with the naive public. And you know, there was just a lot of cheering that was kind of stupid in my opinion. Like when Colby was fighting Dos Anjos, there was a lot of USA chanting. And that necessarily to me isn't like you're rooting for a fighter's skill set or what he can do. You're necessarily rooting for your country. And I've seen it before when Fedor fought Brett Rogers. Forget what Strikeforce it was that I got to see, but it was the same thing. And just a lot of stupid comments, stupid yelling, like kick him in the spleen, and a lot of inaccurate assessments of what was going on just all around. And like I said, you have to take the good with the bad. And like I compare it, I guess, to movie theater experiences where you go and there's stupid people clapping at times where like Chewbacca and Han Solo would come out in The Force Awakens on the Millennium Falcon. You know, it's an awesome moment and take it in, but you don't gotta clap and like, oh yeah, look, I'm making it a moment. I just, you know, whatever. I don't like that, and I'm not one to be doing that. So like, it was just stupid stuff. Like people that were rooting for Colby. You can go ahead and root for Colby. I've already stated that I'm not a fan of Colby Covington and his antics and his boring style, but I can respect that he's a wrestler that nullifies a lot of games. If you like that, that's up to that. Well, that's you. You like a boring fighter. He negates the other person's fighting style by pressuring them against the cage and just holding them there. But, I can see what he does and I can respect what he does in that aspect. I can see what he's doing in terms of talking his way to a title, and it's worked 100%. I don't have to like it. I don't have to pay attention to it. It definitely works because people are drawn to it either to hate him, mostly hate him. But a lot of people have seemed to cling on to him because of the controversy and seem to have become a Colby fan because of it, like being controversial. And that's what I don't like. Like I said, you got to take the good with the bad. But I get it. You're rooting for Colby, and as he's walking out, you stand up and cheer on the crowd to keep booing you. Not Colby. I'm saying like fans in front of me in my vicinity doing this. As Colby's coming out and getting booed, they get up and face the crowd and and relish in Colby's booing. And I get it, you're a Colby fan, but what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you being stupid? You had nothing to do with this. You're not in Colby's camp. I get it, you're rooting for him. Cheer for Colby. If you're a Colby fan, cheer for him. But no, you're getting up and you're trying to relish in his booze, in his controversialness. And it's stupid in my opinion. You can do what you want to do, and you want to be part of the moment, and you want to be part of the show. But there's ways to do it, and that was just stupid. And just hearing opinions and their reads of the fight, you can tell that they didn't know what they were talking about. They were just there to root on their guy and pick a side and fuck the other guy. And maybe, that's just maybe on me. I go to enjoy a fight. I go to enjoy and watch the show, an MMA show. And I definitely had my picks, but like as far as the main event, I was, hoping for a good fight. I was hoping Whittaker won, but I wasn't hating on anybody. I was definitely hating on Colby, wanting Dos Anjos to win. But like in the Megan versus Holly Holm, I wanted Megan to win. I was rooting for Megan. I wouldn't be mad if Holly Holm would have won. Stuff like that, I don't necessarily root against people, and in this era, it seems like once you pick a side, you have to root for the other one. And I'm not necessarily for that. I'm more of a, I'll pick a guy, but I'm gonna enjoy the fight either way because I'm an MMA fan and I want to see the fight. The fight interests me. Other than that, it was awesome. Like I said, it was an awesome night. But I did talk my shit as well. I made myself loud enough to the point where they could hear me 3 seats away, and saying shit like turning to my nephew and telling like super loud and being like, I bet if Colby whipped his dick out right now, these fucking idiots would start sucking his cock. And they would turn and look at me. But what the fuck were they going to do? I was going to beat the fuck out of them if they tried anything. Self-defense, people. I wasn't going to instigate anything. But, if you're going to be that retarded and you want the booze and you want the shit-talking that Colby's going to receive, then get ready for the shit-talking that Colby's going to receive. Maybe I was just being an asshole. I was just being an asshole. But it was people getting on my nerves because it was all night, man. It wasn't just like the Colby. The Colby was the pinnacle of it because he did have the most resentment from the crowd and the most boos and the most reaction from the crowd as far as just a first initial reaction. But I don't know. Awesome event. My dad picked me up. Like I said, I lived 10 minutes away, so I didn't even have to Uber it or do anything. He works at Malcolm X, so he works right next door. He knows all the spots to get in and out really quick, so I got home quick. Me and my nephew took off to Maxwell Street Polish. I'm not sure if that's just a Chicago joint. It might be just a Chicago joint. They have Polish sausages with grilled onions on top and mustard. That shit's a badass. It's not a sandwich. It's not a hot dog. It's a sausage. It's a Polish sausage, all right? Try it out if you guys ever come to Chicago, Maxwell Street. I had some double cheeseburgers. How they do their double cheeseburgers is just regular American cheese, beef patty, whatever. But then they put mustard and grilled onions. If you're looking for a variety in a burger from your lettuce, tomato, onion, and mayo, it's definitely a way to go. It's almost a take on White Castle, way better than White Castle because it's a way thicker patty and it's an actual hamburger and actual grilled onions as well. But yeah, if you're ever in Chicago, I'd definitely check it out. There's a bunch of them all around town. My nephew checked it out for the first time. He had never been to one. Liked it. So, awesome night. UFC 225, Maxwell Street Polish. I picked up a couple of Infinity War posters. Went toy shopping. Picked up a Helios Skrill Spartan to add to my Halo display. I think that was it for the weekend. I didn't do much else. I hung out with the nephews, found those posters. Didn't find that much figs besides that Spartan. But yeah, it was a good weekend. Good weekend for the fights. Good weekend for me. It was here in Chicago. I had an awesome time. And let's get into the fights. We'll start from the beginning. So, Mike Santiago versus Dan Ige. So this one was a quick one. This one ended round one, like a minute in. Dan Ige landed some strikes, but mostly went for the takedown. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he was able to muster a good double leg. Got top control, and I think he landed mount right away and just started bombing away on Mike Santiago and got the TKO finish. 4:17 of round one. And, yeah, it's a quick fight. Not much. Impressive win by Dan Ige. Mike Santiago has had a tough run because Dan Ige has come from the Contender Series. I think Santiago as well. Let me make sure. Yeah, he's off of the Contender Series where he got a win, but he's off 3 straight losses. So he's been beat by Zabit, which is a badass. Zabit has shown his skill set. And then he fought Mads Burnell back in 2018, January 14th. Got beat 3-round decision. He got submitted by Zabit, just so you guys know. And then he's fought Dan Ige and lost by first round TKO. Didn't land any strikes. Didn't do much of anything besides get taken down and beat up. Dan Ige is off of the Contender Series as well. He beat Luis Gomez on the Contender Series back in July 25th, 2017. Shout out to the Contender Series. Actually, it starts off today, so I'm going to check it out after I get off of recording this, and then I'm going to record with Jeff, and then I'll check it out on Fight Pass. The Contender Series is today, and today is July 12th, 2018. So the Contender Series starts, so check that out. Back to Dan Ige. He fought Luis Gomez. Like I said, he got a 3-round submission back in the Contender Series. And then his first fight in the UFC was a loss against Julio Arce. Julio Arce just defeated, I forget which one of the Tamer brothers. Daniel and... It might have been Daniel. But I can actually check. He just defeated one of the Tamer brothers by submission, rear naked choke. Yeah, it was Daniel Tamer that Julio Arce has beat. So, yeah. Julio Arce has kind of shown that he does have some skills coming off of the Contender Series as well, picking up a win in his last fight. Dan Ige couldn't really get anything going. He lost a 3-round decision, was outstruck, and just couldn't do anything. Couldn't muster up any offense. And it was nice to see Dan get a quick win over Mike Santiago, which I'm not sure what happens with him. 3 straight losses in the UFC, all against tough opponents, which it seems like they all have been tough opponents. But again, 3 straight losses. It just seems it's bad luck for him because all these guys came off of the Contender Series, so they get wins off of there. And then they get into the UFC, and they've been facing each other in the UFC. Guys that have won in the Contender Series kind of have come out to face each other. They've been pairing them up against each other. And what I'm trying to get at is that Mike Santiago's kind of had that bad luck because he's faced the guys off of the Contender Series and Zabit. So they've all turned out to be really good guys. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if they cut him. I would hope they wouldn't and give him another fight. Maybe someone in the UFC that's had similar losses. It's had 2 losses in the UFC. I don't know. I don't know what happens there. All right, let's see. So, next fight in the UFC Fight Pass early preliminary card was Clay Guida versus Charles Oliveira. Charles the Bronx Oliveira. Clay Guida, the Chicago native. Oliveira, the Brazilian. Oliveira, super crazy good jiu-jitsu game and very good Muay Thai. He is susceptible to power shots. We have seen him taken out with, not the hardest of punches, but he's one of those guys that's too big for 145, maybe not big enough for 155. But he was big enough to defeat Guida in this one. So Guida with the boxing, wrestling style came at Oliveira and eventually made the mistake of going for the takedown, if I remember right. Let's see. I don't know if it was. But round 1 submission for Charles Oliveira. After landing some strikes, some heavy kicks on Guida, but Guida, I'm pretty sure Guida went for the takedown and got submitted with a guillotine. I know he got submitted with the guillotine. I think he went for the takedown is what I'm trying to say. So Charles Oliveira, winner by submission, 242. And not much more to say about that one. Charles Oliveira says he wants crack it back at 145, but he's missed it a lot, so I don't know what to say about that. I don't know if you give him a 145 or I don't know. Make him face someone at 155 again. Maybe he doesn't like that weight class because he's not big enough for it. Moving on. Joseph Benavidez, the return of Joseph Benavidez from maybe like a year layoff versus Sergio Pettis, the brother of Anthony Pettis, Anthony Showtime Pettis, former UFC champion. But this was a close fight to call. Back and forth. I don't think anyone really got in a lot of trouble. Joseph was hurt in the first round, but never really on the verge of being finished. Sergio kind of caught him with some rights. Sergio caught him while Joseph was coming in, because Joseph has a lot of heavy pressure. He likes taking guys down a lot, so he pressures forward with the strikes, eventually mixing it up with takedowns. Sergio was able to find a place for those rights while this guy was coming in and rocked him a little bit in the first. But got taken down himself. Nothing was really done with the takedown or on the floor as far as damage or submission attempts. So the first round would kind of have to go to Sergio Pettis. Like I said, I'm gonna go round by round with this one because it was kind of hard to call. And then In the second round, that one I think was a little bit closer. It was back and forth. There was no takedowns on Joseph's part, no takedowns on Sergio's part, no shock there. You know, he's the more striker heavy guy. But the reason I think Sergio won the fight and won the rounds, the close rounds, is because he's able to hit coming forward and going back. As is Joseph can as well, but he's not as good as Sergio Pettis while doing it. And Sergio was able to not necessarily stuff the takedowns, but nullify any damage that Joseph was able to present. So Sergio would get back up. Depends on how you want to score it. Sergio was landing the more significant strikes in the second round. You kind of have to give the second round. That, like I said, that one was a little bit closer, so I'd give it to Joseph, man. No, I'd give it to Sergio. Like I said, there was no takedowns and there was more significant strikes. Benavidez had the control, but that's his forward pressure. Like, that's him coming forward and landing the strikes. But Sergio's able to keep up the strike count with Benavidez without necessarily having to control the pace. He's able to hit coming forward and going backwards as well, while Joseph is coming at him. So it just looked like Sergio was doing more because he was active coming forward and moving back. So in those close rounds, I think they would give it to Sergio. And then in the last round, I guess you could give it to Joseph. It's a close round, and the only reason I think you would give it to him is the takedown. I think Sergio landed stronger strikes, but by stronger strikes, I mean the more significant strikes. I just think the takedown probably won Joseph that round because they were pretty even in strikes. But again, it's the judges. I give the nod to Sergio in a razor. It was a close fight, but I'd give the nod to Sergio. And it's interesting because, yeah, Joseph is that good. Joseph Benavidez is that good. But I don't know if they were going to give us I think it's the fourth time he would fight Demetrius Johnson, or the third time he would fight Demetrius Johnson. Third time. First time he lost by decision. Second time he got stopped by knockout. I know he's built his way back up, but it's nice seeing Sergio kind of mix things up and shuffle it up a little bit. Now that Cejudo has a title shot in August, I believe, against Mighty Mouse. So we might see Sergio get a shot at Mighty Mouse after this. After he fights Henry Cejudo. So we'll see. Hometown native Rashad Evans took on Anthony Smith. They're both moving up to 205. Rashad had tested the waters at 185. I guess he didn't want to make the weight anymore. Anthony Smith is moving up to 205. They both moved up to 205. It was a quick victory for Anthony Smith. He landed a knee against the cage. He had Rashad's head just held down with a forearm, like with his forearm, and it was there perfect. He just had to lift it up and tap Rashad on the chin, and that's exactly what he did. I think Rashad might have been going for a takedown, and he defended it well. Eventually got to the position where he was able to land a beautiful knee, knocking out Rashad Evans, and yeah, it sucked for Rashad, man. He really didn't get any strikes off. Really didn't get to see much of him. And it was just a beautiful knee on Anthony Smith's part. I wasn't too fond of Anthony Smith, but that was an incredible knockout. I thought he was moving up to 185 because of skill set, not necessarily weight issues, but the weight might have been drawing away from his power and not letting him fight the way he wanted to. But, who knows? He knocks out Rashad first round, devastating knockout. incredible knockout. I hope Rashad hangs it up. He's had an incredible career, but, you know, it's hard to see. It's hard to see all those knockouts, man. All right. In the first fight of the FS1 prelims, this was one of the shittier fights. There was 2 really shit fights on the card. The first fight on the FS1 prelims and the first one on the main card. This one started off all right. It started off with them both throwing haymakers, trying to knock each other out. But that soon ended with them gassing out by the second round. They were done. They were gassed out. Like even the first round, it was just a lack of skills, I think, on both parts. They zapped each other's energy, and not in a super exciting way. But Crystal Rocha eventually gets on top of Rashad Coulter after Rashad Coulter had defended a takedown and gotten up once already. Crystal Rocha didn't want any more of those hands. Took him down again, held him down on the floor, and just beat the fuck out of him. Not really. It was more of a Rashad Coulter being super tired and Crystal Rocha being the better wrestler and holding him there. And Rashad just not being able to muster up any more energy, used it all up, was on the bottom, couldn't get Crystal Rocha off of him. Even my nephew mentioned that these guys looked very unprofessional. And yes, they did look very unprofessional. They should have been on the prelims. We could have moved up any of those fights on the FS1 early prelims, and it would have made up a way better fight than that one. Santiago versus Ige, way better. There was a stoppage. You could see Dan Ige's skill set on display right away. Clay Guida versus Oliveira. Again, a super awesome submission on Oliveira's part. Benavidez versus Pettis was a nice back and forth display of good striking and a good mixture of striking and wrestling by Benavidez. Evans got knocked out by Smith. And then Rashad Coulter just physically exhausted himself to the loss, giving Chris De La Rocha the victory. Pretty much that's what happened, in my opinion. Rashad Coulter should work on his cardio, man. And who am I to say? But, you know, this is me judging professionals. If they're going to be getting paid this much and they're in the UFC on a professional level and they're going to gas out like that and give up the fight when he could have won it, he had the fight in the beginning. Like, if he would have continued to go with a good cardio, with good cardio and continue to hit Chris De La Rocha and been able to prevent that takedown and being beat up on the floor, I think Rashad Coulter had a way better chance of winning than Chris De La Rocha. He put himself out of that by gassing himself out and not having the cardio to continue. That's why I judge, because he could have won this fight, in my opinion, but didn't because of his gas tank. I think he had the better skill set. Not necessarily in... Well, he did get up from the floor, so he did have good wrestling defense and good getting up skills from the floor. But once he was tired as fuck, he just couldn't do it anymore. Exhaustion kicked in, and that was it for him. Let's see. I don't know. I wish I could tell you what to do with these guys next, but like I said, they're both guys out of shape. Maybe I don't even know if Rashad Coulter is going to continue in the UFC. I think he lost against the Vanilla Gorilla in his last fight. That one was exciting, but again, it was them just punching each other in the face. Okay, so yeah, he just lost to Crystal Rocha, second round TKO. Lost to Taito Vyasa, round 1 TKO. And then lost to Chase Sherman in a Fight of the Night performance, round 2 TKO. So he's been finished 3 times, 3 of his UFC fights. He's there for a war, but like I said, he has got no cardio, and he's taking a lot of shots. So he's not building any rank in the UFC, in my opinion. Work on that cardio, boy. 8-4. If he had better conditioning, he'd be able to take a lot more shots and be able to recover a lot better. But Just can't. Hometown Ricardo Lamas versus Mirsad Bektic with the sweet-ass mustache. In my opinion, Ricardo Lamas came in with a completely wrong game plan. I don't know if he thought he couldn't have beaten Mirsad in the stand-up department, but I think that was the better option if he would have stuck to just a striking heavy game plan, mixed in maybe more kicks and stuck on the feet, because he decided to try to take Mirsad down, and that just didn't work out. Mirsad was able to get Lamas down when he wanted to. Mirsad controlled Lamas the whole fight, outstruck him. We didn't even have that many dangerous submission attempts on Ricardo Lamas' part. We did have a guillotine, but Mirsad just popped his head out. Like I said, he wasn't any real danger. I was rooting for Lamas, but I thought he came in with a really wrong game plan. I thought his better chance was in the striking department and to keep it on the feet, but he decided to try to mix it up way early and often, and he kept going to that same thing, and it just wasn't working. So Mirsad Bektic picks up the decision win, and we got a contender in Bektic. He's moving up, and he's got a great ground game. Maybe not as good as Ortega, but we'll see. We'll see where he goes from here. Maybe no, let's see. I was gonna say Sunsa, but that's not even his division. Let me take a quick look at the rankings for featherweight. Let's see. Featherweight. Ortega's 1. Brian Ortega or Max Holloway is the champion. Aldo 2. Frankie Edgar 3. Jeremy Stevens 4. Cub Swanson 5. Josh Emmett 6. Ricardo Lama 7. And Bektic is 11, and he just beat the number 7, so he definitely has to jump up. I know Emmett had surgery to fix up his severely fractured up skull after the loss to Jeremy Stevens. I forget who Cub is fighting. He just lost to... Was it Frankie Edgar? I don't remember who it was. I think it was Frankie Edgar. He just lost to Frankie Edgar, but maybe Cub versus Lamas, maybe Bektic versus Cub, or Bektic versus Aldo, Bektic versus Stevens. I think Stevens and Cub are... No, Aldo and Stevens are slated, so 2 and 4 are slated. Frankie just fought, so that leaves Cub. You probably want to match him up against Cub, just because he should jump up some slots. Maybe Renato Moicano gets a shot at Bektic. That'd be a nice fight. I checked that fight out. It'd be an interesting fight. Let's see. Yeah, so Lamas gets beaten. Mirsad Bektic, unanimous decision. And then we had, in our first ladies fight, we had Claudia Gadella versus Carla Esparza. Former champion Carla Esparza won the show at 115. Beat Rose Namajunas. Rose Namajunas is now the champion. She's beaten the girl that beat Carla Esparza, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She's beaten her twice now. Rose has, dominantly. Claudia has given Joanna her best test besides Rose that has beaten her. So it was interesting to see this fight. And this one was probably one of the closer ones out of all night, just because Claudia had more of the control, had more of the takedowns, but she really didn't do anything on the floor. She was landing strikes on the feet. Carla did have a lot of comeback moments, as in like reversing the takedown, pushing through it, and actually getting it. The volume of strikes is heavily in favor for Carla Esparza, and this is where the CompuBox kind of gets deceiving. She landed 205 strikes, total strikes, to 78 total strikes from Claudia Gadella. But those were a lot of pitter-patter strikes on the floor. Not a lot of them had a ton of heat on them. Not a lot of them had weight behind them. And they were more to stay active more than anything. That's not to say she didn't win the fight, but the judges gave the nod to Claudia. The crowd didn't agree. They booed the shit out of her. Joe Rogan even asked for them to cheer, which they did. They listened to Joe Rogan. I did too. I wasn't booing though, but she did get a lot of boos. It was a close fight. I probably, man, it's tough. It's a tough call, man. It's a tough call because what do you go by, the strikes or do you go by the takedowns? Because Claudia out wrestled Esparza in every round. She took her down more, but she got outstruck. And like I said, a lot of those punches were on the floor and didn't have a lot of heat behind them. I guess you would have to go to the significant strikes, but not even that, man. This was a hard fight to call. It's a really hard fight to call. Carla Esparza came out on the MMA Hour today and said that Claudia Gadelha had greased. She didn't tell anybody. She told Ariel today. Hey, man. The judges saw it in Claudia's favor. I guess Claudia won. But I don't know. That one was really tough. Alistair Overeem versus the hometown hero Curtis Razor Blades. I thought it was going to be very tough for Curtis to muster any offense against Alistair, but that wasn't the case. The first round was a lot of them looking at each other and measuring distance, and Alistair kind of extending his arm out there and using his footwork to move around, move forward, but not really landing any strikes whatsoever on either end. Curtis Blades not being that decorated of a striker. It was 10-9 for Overeem in the first round, strike-wise. Second round came around, and Curtis landed a little bit more. But that's because he was able to take down Alistair, and he was able to nullify Alistair's movement, Alistair's footwork. He was able to land some shots on the floor, and that's definitely where Curtis wanted it. I thought the problem was going to be in the grappling. I thought Alistair would shoot off some knees that would cause a lot of problems for Curtis. That wasn't the issue. Curtis was very smart about it. He pressured Alistair against the cage and was landing a variety of strikes. He was coming with hooks, uppercuts, jabs, but got very smart about it and landed a takedown instead of gassing himself out, which eventually led to the finish when he was in Alistair's guard and landed, I believe it was 5 elbows to Alistair's head, which cut him open viciously. The second or the third knocked him out. He was dazed by the second, so it really didn't matter. I think after the second, he just wasn't guarding anymore effectively whatsoever, and Curtis landed 3 more razor elbows on Alistair. One of the most devastating, not one because it was multiple, but some of the most devastating cuts and elbows seen in MMA today, coming from Curtis Blades, man. Not that I'm shocked, but Curtis Razor Blades. Like, that's a big dude to be getting hammered on by some elbows. And he put out Overeem. It was crazy. Awesome fight. Round 3. It's pretty boring up until that point, but Curtis able to get the job done, able to nullify Alistair and not get taken out. Let's see. So the main card started off with CM Punk versus Mike Jackson, and I know I was super excited for this fight. I was rooting for CM Punk. I was looking forward to this fight. And I'll tell you why I was looking forward to this fight. Well, I was looking forward to this fight because I'm an MMA fan, but I am also a WWE fan. So I was a fan of Punk. I'm a fan of him. Well, not a fan of him coming into the UFC. I'm a fan of watching him and rooting for him. I will root for the guy because I've seen him in his past endeavors. And I wanted to root for the guy, and we didn't get to see a lot of him in the first fight against Micheal, which is a real fighter. And I thought we were going to be able to see him redeem himself and not necessarily win, but maybe put on a show, put on a back and forth, and maybe land something that would drop Jackson, maybe some submission attempts that would put Jackson in danger, something. I was rooting for something of that nature. And what we got is what we should have gotten. What we knew what we were going to get. We knew what this was. We knew what we were going to get, and we all bought it, and we all knew what it was. But I don't think we were ready. I don't think we were ready to see this. Actually, to be honest, it shows how much this sport should be respected, and how much these athletes should be respected, and how much they deserve to get paid to do this. And by that I mean CM Punk and Mike Jackson probably put on the shittiest fight in UFC history. And I'm not trying to talk shit about them. They are both amateurs fighting in the UFC on a pro platform. And I don't want to talk shit about it because like I said, I was rooting for Punk. I didn't put this fight on. I didn't put it on the pay-per-view. Of course, I was rooting for Punk, and, witch hunt all you want because I'm a WWE fan, and I was rooting for a WWE guy in the UFC, but I was rooting for a WWE guy in the UFC against a reporter, against Mike Jackson. For no reason should I have been rooting for Mike Jackson whatsoever over CM Punk, and I didn't. I was rooting for CM Punk 100%. And he went in there and put on one of the most amateur-esque shows I've ever seen in my life. But so did Mike Jackson. Mike Jackson came in very arrogant, kind of gesturing as if eating the boos that were coming in at him, saying he was going to beat CM Punk. Of course, it's CM Punk. You should have beaten him. And he did beat him. Like I said, in a very amateur match. Even my nephew commented that why was this match even on there, and I explained to him why. The eyes that CM Punk drew to the sport is why this was on the pay-per-view and why he was given a chance to fight in the UFC. CM Punk rushes in, trying to, I guess, establish a range, or trying to establish his jab. He gets caught right away, and you could see the look on his face. And as soon as I saw him get hit once when it wasn't a heavy shot by Mike Jackson, and I saw the look of shock on his face, I was like, fuck. That's it. Punk is done. Anything that Punk mustered didn't really matter. The heaviest strike that he landed on Mike Jackson, like it was like a right that kind of just turned Mike Jackson's head. The takedowns weren't nullified by technique, but they were nullified by Mike Jackson's power, and that's not saying much. That's not saying that Mike Jackson has a ton of power. He has no power. He just knew what to do against it, and not technique wise, kind of just to muster his way out of it and to stop it. Mike Jackson did not do himself any favors, and I was saying it the whole time. I didn't listen to the commentary. I listened to him on the MMA Hour and how he said that commentators were going to be biased against him and people were going to agree with what Dana White said. I was saying this the whole time he was fighting CM Punk, looking at my nephew, telling him Mike Jackson is doing himself no favors. He will never fight in the UFC again if he continues to do this, and he does not finish CM Punk. He didn't necessarily have to finish Punk. He just had to go out there and try to finish Punk. But he didn't even seem to do that. He seemed to just go over there and bask in the glory of being at UFC 225 in Chicago, kind of accepting his status as, yeah, and I'm an amateur and I'm going to absorb as much as I can here because I'm never going to be here again, instead of, hey, I'm going to knock out Punk and maybe I'll get thrown on to the Contender Series. Hey, I'm going to submit Punk and maybe I'll get thrown into another UFC fight and maybe I'll get another opportunity. But I think Mike Jackson knows his skill set, and I think he knows where he's at. And I think he did what he did for a reason. I think he did bask in it, and I think he came in very arrogant, and I think he got his $500,000 or whatever it was to fight on the pay-per-view and to fight against CM Punk. He got paid his money, and he's never going to get paid that much again, ever again, for fighting a UFC fight is what I'm trying to say. I don't know about it, what he does outside of the UFC. He could be making more there, and he could be a happy man outside of the UFC. But he got paid a fuckload of money to come in and bask in the glory of UFC 225 and not finish CM Punk, not attempt to finish CM Punk. And yeah, it was disrespectful given the opportunity. And I don't blame Dana White for saying what he said, you know. He said what he said, and he's probably not going to... He called Mike Jackson an idiot, and he's fired from the UFC, and he's not going to give him another opportunity. That's fine. That's his company. He's going to do what he wants to do. Mike Jackson didn't do himself any favors. He had the opportunity. He had the platform. He had the opponent to do it on, and he chose not to. He chose to flounder his opportunity in the highest platform in fighting combat. He was in the UFC, and he chose not to finish a guy that was handed to him, which he even said multiple times. And he was on Ariel Helwani saying that he didn't want to cause CM Punk any more damage, and that he isn't cut out to be a fighter, and this and that. Then don't say that you're going to try to work something out with Dana White to get a contract after that. If you said you don't want to finish CM Punk because you're not a fighter and maybe you shouldn't be in this, then why leave it out there that you want to continue fighting? The story just doesn't add up to me. And maybe I'm biased, and maybe it's because I was a CM Punk fan. Let me know what you guys think. Drop me a message. Let me know what you guys think on the CM Punk versus Mike Jackson fight. You can see how amateur-esque CM Punk is, and I don't think he would fare too well on the higher levels of the amateur scene. And we saw where Jackson was, and I don't think he'd fare. Well, we saw he wouldn't fare well at the lower levels of UFC pros, and he was calling himself the pro versus the amateur. Well, guess what, buddy? You're an amateur too, especially if you couldn't finish CM Punk. It was a shit fight. Shit fight. And, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about that one. Mike Jackson's didn't do himself any favors, and he probably won't fight in the UFC ever again. CM Punk won't either, but there was a lot of cringeworthy moments during that fight, man. There was an attempt of a guillotine that should never have been attempted in a million years. A jump, like he tried to jump up on Mike Jackson and like jump into a guillotine. Didn't have it at all. Jackson popped out of it right away and dropped Punk. Slammed him. Shitty fight. Next fight was Andre the Pitbull Arlovski. He's trained out of Chicago. I think he was a cop in Chicago as well. Taking on the young up-and-comer 27-year-old from Australia, Tai Tuivasa. Tai Tuivasa has had 2 fights in the UFC. He's knocked out Rashad Coulter and Cyril Asker. And now he adds Andre Arlovski to the names that he has beaten in the UFC. This was a close fight, but ultimately Tai Tuivasa beat Andre by forward pressure and taking the first round. It looked like he got a little tired after that. He put it on heavy in the first round, and then Andre was slowly getting back into it. Looked very good in the third round, but ultimately I think Tai came out with the victory as well. I think the judges got that one right. And he came out with the hilarious Celine Dion, Your Love Will Go On, I think. He was draping the flag on his back. As soon as the song hit, I was laughing my ass off. He tried to get Joe Rogan's shoe to do a shoey. A shoey's where he drinks beer out of someone's shoe. I don't know, it's kind of weird. That's what he likes doing. Awesome victory by Taito Vyasa. Not the knockout that he wanted to continue his streak of knockouts in the UFC, but he beats Andrei Arlovski. Arlovski is number 10 in the heavyweight division. Vyasa was 12. That'll definitely shoot him. Or Arlovski was 9, sorry. So definitely shoot him up there. Maybe a shot against Marcin Tybura. Dos Santos, I think, is free as well. Curtis Blades just opened up, but I don't think you want to do Curtis Blades versus Vyasa just because they're too young guys in the heavyweight division that could ultimately meet up in the heavyweight championship picture instead of the come up. Let's see. So yeah, Taito Vyasa picks up the decision over Andrei the Pitbull Arlovski. Arlovski, it was an awesome performance by Arlovski. I did say he was a little chinny. There was nothing chinny about Arlovski that night. He did take some heavy shots and recovered in the first round. I think he did get knocked out. Yeah, he did get dropped in the first round, but recovered. Ultimately came back and put it on Vyasa in the second. Vyasa, I think, won the third. Looking back at the numbers. But impressive chin by Arlovski. But even more impressive win by Vyasa. Makes his way up some runs up the ladder. And next fight was Megan Anderson versus Holly Holm. Holly Holm had lost to Shevchenko here in Chicago. Yeah, it wasn't the Durandamy. I think I mentioned Durandamy earlier, but it was the Shevchenko fight that she lost here in Chicago. Megan was making her debut from Invicta at 145. They're trying to get the 145-pound division going for Cyborg to get her more opponents so she can build a legacy in the UFC because they don't want her to take off from the UFC and go to Bellator because they do have a 145-pound division with contenders in that division. So they brought in Megan, her first fight. Looks wonderful. The first minute of the first round was able to land great combos, some heavy strikes, and I was worried for Holly initially right away with the strikes that Megan was landing. She definitely outsized Holly. And Holly right away was like, fuck this, got the takedown, and ultimately used her wrestling to nullify Megan Anderson's striking game. Holly Holm has been working on her wrestling / jiu-jitsu game since her loss to Miesha Tate back at UFC 200 where she lost her belt. She's been working on that, and we finally get to see it. She always has good work against the cage, pressing her opponent against there, and then using her footwork, using her outside movement to get away, and then coming forward, landing some strikes, then maybe pushing them against the cage if they have good forward pressure. She used her grappling against Megan, more of the wrestling side, and taking her down to the floor and controlling her on the floor, kind of sitting more in Holly Holm or Megan's half guard, locking her down, not allowing her to move. And ultimately picking up the 3-round decision and possibly earning her a shot at Amanda Nunes back at 135. But we'll see. And hopefully they bring in another 145er to face Megan Anderson and not Chris Cyborg right away. But we'll see what they decide to do with that. In the co-main event for the interim welterweight title, we had Rafael Dos Anjos versus Colby Covington in what I thought was, I would say, boring match, but it wasn't really a boring match. I think I'm just being biased towards it because I'm not a Colby fan. Colby ultimately picks up the victory in a 3-round decision. I think you have to give Colby the victory on points alone. I think he was able to nullify Rafael Dos Anjos' game by wrestling him against the cage, holding him against the cage, getting takedowns. But what really impressed me about Dos Anjos is he was able to get up. He was able to land combos, not as many as he wanted, and not able to get the rhythm that he wanted and nullify Colby Covington's game. But he was able to land some good shots. He landed way more, well, not way more, but he landed more significant strikes than Colby. Colby was able to get 7 takedowns to Rafael's 3. I think it was 4 rounds to 1, in my opinion. If Dos Anjos was able to stop the pressure-heavy game against the cage from Colby, he definitely would have landed more strikes and gotten the victory, in my opinion. I just think Colby's pressure against the cage ultimately got him the win. But Colby's pressure against the cage was nullifying Rafael Dos Anjos' striking game, which ultimately wasn't producing offense himself. So Colby wasn't producing offense against the cage as much as I guess I would have liked it. He was more using it to nullify Rafael Dos Anjos' game, because Rafael Dos Anjos was landing some strikes. Colby was landing good strikes as well, but I thought the more significant ones were landed on Dos Anjos' part. And whenever that started happening more often, Colby would go for the control against the cage. He ultimately controlled him for 12 minutes and 37 seconds, pretty much the whole fight. Like I said, the fact that Dos Anjos was able to get up a bunch, get Colby off of him, and still get off more significant strikes and very close total strikes to Colby, it just goes to show you how much of a beast Rafael Dos Anjos is. Whatever you guys want to say about him, he's the 155-pound champ, ex-champ. Should be at 165. There is no 165-pound division, so he's at 170, taking on guys that are bigger than him. If Colby didn't have the technique and the size over Dos Anjos, I think it'd be a different story. But, like I said, Colby has good wrestling, and he could use it to pressure him against the cage. Take it for what it is. Colby won that fight, in my opinion. I think it was close. I think it could have been a lot closer if Dos Anjos could have done a little bit more to stop the wrestling of Dos Anjos. Maybe if he would have dropped him in one of the rounds, if he would have dropped Colby in one of the rounds, we might be seeing a different outcome, but who knows. And then in the main event, we had Robert Whittaker versus Yoel Romero in a rematch from UFC 203, I believe. No, 213? Yeah, I think it was 213. 203 is way too long ago. Let's see. So the first fight, we had Robert Whittaker winning by unanimous decision. We had Yoel winning the first 2 rounds using his grappling to get the victory, or the victory of those 2 rounds. But ultimately, the refs stood them up in one of them and separated them from the cage. Robert Whittaker started forming a comeback early 3rd round, picked up the 3rd round, in my opinion, picked up the 4th, and ultimately picked up the 5th with a messed up knee from the 1st round. So this fight comes around, and in the 1st round, he completely breaks his thumb, messing up his right hand, making him change or vary his game plan to not use that right hand as much. And his game plan in the 1st round was to use that same kick that Romero used on him to mess up his knee. He right away started firing it off at Romero, messing up Romero. Well, not even messing up Romero's knee, trying to mess up Romero's knee. But like he said, and like Rockhold said, Romero is made out of fucking steel. He's made out of granite. That guy, like, you hit him and it hurts you. So it might have been hurting Romero. We don't know. The guy plays it off like a fucking beast. But Whittaker was attacking that knee, using a lot of teeps, keeping Romero away. The first 2 rounds, he was actually coming forward, kicking him in the knee and jabbing a lot. Broke his hand the 1st round. Romero was shelling up a lot the 1st round, kind of a weird shell, like elbow. I don't know. He was covering one side and like lifting the elbow with another, like putting up the elbows almost as a shield. Kind of giving up the first 2 rounds and letting Whittaker get comfortable in his game. and be the aggressor. It could have been something to do with Yoel Romero's missed weight cut. Maybe he had trouble rehydrating and gaining some energy and he was depleted, but it seemed like he was waiting the first two maybe to catch Whittaker, or maybe to try to figure out with what Whittaker was trying to do and trying to establish or figure out the distance and read the distance and land. I gave the first two to Whittaker in this one, so it was kind of an opposite of the last fight in the first two. We had Romero winning the first two in the first one, and then in the second fight, I gave him the first 2 rounds to Whittaker. And in the first fight, we saw Whittaker make a change in the third round to eventually pull it off, and we kind of see the same thing coming from Romero here, but a lot more heavy pressure, I guess, in strikes and almost finishing rate. So Yoel lays it out all on the line, comes out this third round after kind of conserving his energy for the first two and lands some haymakers on Whittaker, drops Whittaker, jumps on him, but Whittaker was able to get up enough to where they wrestle against the cage. Whittaker takes some more damage against the cage, recovers, and lands some devastating elbows to where he fires back off some elbows, wobbles Romero a little bit. Romero comes back, starts landing some more, and then they kind of disengage somewhat and kind of try to reestablish their distance. And then Romero, again, as they're exchanging again, he cracks Whittaker. And Whittaker, I don't know how he does it. He's just able to recover, able to keep his sense, and recovers and survives the third round. Almost gets stopped. And the reason I do not give the third round a 10-8 is because, yes, Robert Whittaker did get dropped, but right away he recovers, lands devastating elbows. Every time he got dropped in the third round, he came back with some devastating shots. Yes, he did look hurt, but he would come back and hurt Romero as well. It was a back and forth round, so you have to give it a 10-9. I don't think that deserves a 10-8 round because Whittaker wasn't completely dominated. Romero, yes, won the round very clearly, but Whittaker was able to do enough, in my opinion, to keep it a 10-9 round. Coming forward, firing shots off of his own, and able to do enough, in my opinion. Still, the round goes to Yoel. We have a 29-20, 28. Yeah, we have a 29-28 so far. 2 rounds to 1. Fourth round starts. Robert Whittaker starts establishing his jab again, starts establishing the distance. Again, he can't use his right to come across because he has broken his thumb. He does not know what's broken, but he knows it fucking hurts and it's numb. So he can't use it. He's using it every so often, but not as much as he would like. He's establishing his kick a lot more, establishing his jab, and landing left hooks whenever the opportunity presents himself. Whittaker took the fourth because Yoel, again, got tired, I believe, in my estimation. Took off the fourth round, allowing Robert Whittaker to take the fourth round and ultimately winning the fight, in my opinion, there. So he has 1-2. Romero has the third, 10-9, again, not a 10-8. And then Whittaker has the fourth. The only way Romero would be able to win this fight now is if he gets a knockout or a submission or makes it a 10-7 somehow. I've never seen a 10-7 round. So I gave it a 10-9. I do not give this round a 10-8 either, and I will let you know why. Romero comes out super strong again this round, knowing he's down in the cards, I believe. Knowing that he needs to finish or do something to to devastatingly win the round. He could think he's down 3-1, and if he gets the 10-8, he could tie it here. I think he drops Whittaker again in this 5th round. Yeah, he drops him once, and he outstrikes Whittaker. And wins the round, and in my opinion, it's a 10-8. It's a 10-9 round, not a 10-8, because... So in the 3rd, I said it was a 10-9 because Robert recovered and was able to land and was able to come back to a certain extent. In this round, Yoel hurt him and jumped on him and held him on the floor and landed some strikes on the floor and almost finished him. But ultimately, Robert was able to get back up and establish himself and land some more strikes and never looked completely done. He wasn't gassed out. It wasn't a complete domination of the round. This round is probably the best argument for the 10-8. Just because Robert wasn't able to get off as much offense when he was held on the floor and being attacked. And if Yoel probably would have held him down on the floor and landed those strikes that he was landing and not let Whittaker get up, I probably would have had to have given it a 10-8. Because Whittaker wouldn't have been able to answer back for the knockdown and for those strikes landed. I believe he was able to recover and land some strikes towards the end of the round, making it still a round for Yoel, but a 10-9. Super close fight. You guys can score it how you guys want to score it. I don't have a problem how the judges scored it. If anything, it should have been a draw. But I can see people's arguments for this fight. And that's fight of the year so far. I'm glad I got to see such an awesome fight. It was an awesome card. Bad night for the Chicagoans. A lot of the Chicagoans lost, but there's always next time. But yeah. So it was my return to the United Center. I hadn't been there since I saw Jordan back in, I don't know, back when I was 10. So 19 years ago. So what? 98? Somewhere around there. It was 10, 11. I got to see Jordan play the last 2 years, and it was my return to the United Center. Awesome experience. My nephew enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to go check out some more events. That was Bellator this year, Fedor versus Mir, and now UFC 225, Whittaker versus Romero 2. It's been an awesome year. I'm having a blast doing the podcast. Thanks a lot, everyone, for listening. I really appreciate you guys. You guys make all this worthwhile. Please let me know what you guys think. Shoot me your opinions. Let me know if you guys have any questions regarding UFC 225 here in Chicago. Anything wrestling related. I'm going to be dropping a Money in the Bank one hopefully this week. Right before Money in the Bank, giving you guys my predictions and the build up to the card. UFC Dana White Contender Series is today. I'm going to check it out. I'll try to talk about that as well this week or maybe on Thursday with Jeff. Thanks a lot for joining me. Again, I love all you guys. Thanks a lot for listening. I really appreciate it. You guys all make it worthwhile. Please share. Give me a 5-star rating on iTunes, 5-star rating anywhere. Like, subscribe, share. Tell your friends about it. Tell your mom. Tell everybody. Just tell anyone, some random dude on the street. Tell them to listen to Full Heel Podcast. And, yeah, like I said, I love all you guys. And check me out on Average Joe's MMA Podcast. And, yeah, I love you, bitches.
Chillin' in the penthouse, flagging on your mag, and then I'm about to lay my pimp down. Christian Louboutin, red bottom, coming men's now. On to the next one. Skinny jeans fit in. Pull up to these shows, and these hoes know to get in. Say they like my fitted clothes down to my split ends. Little do she know I got a big ego. Automatic weapon, need to order of protection. Killing, feeling on these records. So my charges is molesting and assault with deadly weapons. Got these rappers feeling threatened. A hip hop veteran, I'm a hip hop felon.